About the AFC South. So I think
there's a history in this league of
Brought him up.
That's an example.
So
I didn't want to make
finish
him the
this.
subject.
For those who believe, for those who are ready.
you have no idea what song
I
it is.
have no idea which one it is.
It's a hot song right now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on another episode of the Doug Siravo Show, which is brought to you by Unsolicited Role Models, the role models you may not want, but you may just need. We have our special guest with us, his once-a-year appearance. We got Daniel Placko. Daniel, how are you today?
Good. How you doing, Doug? Thanks for having me.
Of course, buddy. It's NHL Free Agency Day. Not big names just yet. We do know Mitch Marner is heading to Vegas, but let's recap last year before we get into free agency. Did the Devils exceed your expectations, or were you disappointed a little bit?
I would say that they've exceeded my expectations this past year because they were very low coming off the very disappointing year before. I felt like you could only go up. I feel like had they missed the playoffs completely, that would have been a lot more concerning. So I think they definitely exceeded in that aspect. It was Sheldon Keefe's first year, and I think he did well, won 40-plus games. So I just think along those lines, I think they exceeded it. But, there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I think you and I both wanted them to make the playoffs this year. That was, they made the playoffs, so they achieved that part of the goal. They made the playoffs, but it didn't last that long. But then Carolina got exposed, I believe, by Florida. So let's get to that series real quick. Do you think the Devils lost it, or did Carolina win it?
I think the Devils lost it. I think when you look at how they played goaltending-wise, they played much better with goaltending. I mean, obviously that's a low stat because there's 5 guys in front of them that need to play better than the goaltender. But if you look at Markstrom's stat line, he played incredible that series. You sneak a couple goals here and there. You spin one in Game 4 when it was a 3-2 game, and I can't remember, Carolina's goaltender got pulled because he got hurt, and you had him on the ropes. You had a really good shot. You score one more, it's a new ball game. Game 5, they were up huge, and they fell apart. I mean, that's 2 games right there. It easily could have been 3-2 heading back to New Jersey for Game 6. Games 1 and 2 didn't go well. But I think when you look at how they played as a team, it could have been better, but they had beaten them in certain categories for sure. The special teams was horrendous, that's for sure.
Yeah, because I think Game 3, they were up 2-0, and then Carolina tied it, and we won in overtime on Simo Nemec.
Yep.
Game 5, where they lost the series, they were up 3-0. Then Carolina tied it 3-3. Power play goals. Then Nico took the lead. Then they tied it right back. So I think the Devils lost that series because if you look at the following series, I think we could have beaten Washington, and then Carolina got exposed by Florida. So I think we were the better team in some areas of the game. I think the Devils have to work on a few things this offseason. Let's talk about the goaltending. Jacob Markstrom, Jake Allen. Do you think these are 2 guys, but they're going to hope Markstrom's the guy moving forward when it comes to the playoffs? Do you think he's the type of goalie that could lead you to the conference finals?
I think yes, but he's got a short window. I mean, you're looking at probably a 2-year window that he can do that. I mean, Father Time's got him. I think he'll turn 35 this year. So, I mean, not everyone's going to be Marty Brodeur playing excellent hockey until they're 38, 39. So, I mean, I'm fully prepared for a little bit of a regress, excuse me. But I still think they could win. If they have a quality team in front of him, they could easily win 45 to 50 games. That's for sure. I mean, I think if they make the right moves, couple third and fourth liners, that could help him when they're on the ice with a plus instead of a minus, I think it could put him in a much better spot to not only play better, but also help them win more games.
I agree. So you're a season ticket holder. I'm a season ticket holder. And let's go to the third period because it seems like every time they had a lead, whether it was 2 goals, 1 goal, even sometimes 3 goals, that game would go into overtime. What do you think caused that? Is it just tiredness, lack of depth? They think they have the lead and they're going to win? What caused these blown leads a lot in the third period?
I definitely seemed like a little bit of conditioning. That's for sure. I definitely think they lost. They would play a great second period. They'd earn a lead that they deserved, and then it would fall apart in that third period. I definitely think they were getting beat to pucks. They were playing on their heels in that third period, and like you would say, they would squeak it out to overtime or a shootout, and then lose in a shootout. I definitely think they could need to be more conditioned. We got to get these guys being able to play a full 60 minutes. I was very surprised in that game 3 that they pulled it off in double overtime just for the sake of conditioning. I knew
Yeah.
they were not the more conditioned team, but they played up to a standard in that game 3 that I don't think I saw all year, because it just felt like when the third period, if they were not up by 2 or more, it was going to be hold on to your chair because this game could be tied when you go up to go to the bathroom and come back. Um, it was a lot of quick turnarounds as far as that standpoint. Now, I mean, some people might say it could be a coaching thing because they don't have that resilience to say, okay, we just gave up a goal. No, we got to bounce back. A lot of times it was more than one goal. So, in my opinion, it's a conditioning number one, but definitely they gotta be coached better to know how to handle a situation that it could be put into. As an athlete, as a former athlete yourself, option A is this, option B is this. You always got to have multiple options, and it just felt like they never had that going into last season.
Do you think there's lack of leaders in the room? I know you have Palat, you have Dougie, Nico has the C. Do you think there's guys that just have to speak up more?
Yeah, 100%. I think that they're a young team as far as the leaders. I mean, you look at Nico. Nico's in his mid-20s as the captain. I mean, you definitely want a guy who's in his 30s to lead the team, but he is ultimately the best player on the team. So you understand why he's the captain. But you need that guy like Marchand. You need that guy that's going to be the voice in the locker room that could say, hey, let's get it together. We're down 1-0, we're down 2-0, or we're up 2-0. Let's finish this off. I definitely think this offseason, you got to look at a guy that is going to, I hate to say it, but slam his fist and say, let's get out there and win this game. It's not an if, it's a when, because they never had that. I mean, a lot of guys were hurt last year, but you look at Palat, he never stepped up as far as being a leader. I mean, you need that guy that's going to be the first to the puck. You need that guy that's going to lay on the ice and unfortunately take a puck maybe to the body. I mean, you want a guy who's going to lead by example. And I mean, you could probably tell yourself. I mean, how many times were they fighting for that puck in the end of the season and into the postseason? Like, it just didn't look like they were willing to put their bodies on the line, which I feel like if you have a leader that's willing to do that, you kind of say, all right, he's willing to do it. Next man up. You got to do it too.
Yeah, I feel like in some of those games, even that last playoff game at home where they lost 5-2, it seemed like they had like no, how do you describe it? Not, I guess, the get go. Like they had no like urgency to like want to play more playoff
As
hockey.
someone who was there, the fans were ready. There was no question about that the fans were fired up. The fans wanted it to go back to Carolina 2-2. And there was
Mm-hmm.
no better way to describe it than the team didn't want it. The team was riding that hangover from game 3 2 days before, acting like they advanced. And they had them
Yeah.
on the ropes. I mean, Carolina came out flat. I don't know if you remember that first period. They did not look good the first 10 minutes of the game, 10, 12
No,
minutes.
they didn't. They had a few sloppy goals because we had the Nason turnover, and I think we had a rebound. They had a rebound goal.
I know Markstrom bailed them out a couple times in that, and then the floodgates opened after that. But I mean, you got to be riding that double overtime win and say we exposed them. We exposed them. We had a young guy put the game-winning goal in. We're at home. It's 2-1. It's anybody's series, and that definitely to me was like that's when you had that guy like Palat or Halla or Dylan or Pesci. One of those guys needed to just say, "Hey, we got to send this series back to Carolina 2-2. No ifs, but it's when."
Yeah, and I feel like that's been the story the last few years, even to 22, 23. We beat the Rangers. They were down 0-2. They fought in that series, and then it seemed like in that Carolina series, they exposed us for who we were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean they definitely got a Carolina problem, that's for sure. But that's a whole other podcast. I mean it's just
Yeah.
one of those things that I felt like that team had a little bit more grit to them. This team didn't have that grit. We thought after that 2-1, you're walking out of the Prudential Center at midnight on the Saturday after the game, going, "Hey, we could send this back 2-2," and then you left the arena 48 hours later, going, we're not going to send this back to Jersey. It's done in Carolina. I mean, I think I even said to you at work the next day, this is not going back to Jersey. And if it does, I don't want to be there, because it just, they didn't have that identity of like, we want to win this series. After game 3, it felt like they, in their eyes, won the series and they just never gave up.
Yeah, it was like that was like their Stanley Cup in a way.
Yeah.
I hate to say it that way, but that's what it felt like after game 3.
No, 100%. And I think it comes down to, how much coaching can you blame on a guy not wanting to win a puck in the first period of game 4? I mean, I know a lot of people ride the coaching, but there is a physical effort standpoint. I mean, you could point back to the special teams as being an issue in that series. I mean, I think it was 0 for 12 or 0 for 13. I didn't look the exact stats, but every time you had a power play, you knew it was just 2 minutes of not getting scored on is what it felt like. Okay, 2 minutes.
The power play was atrocious. I think it was maybe like 5 for 31 or something like that in that series.
Yeah, it was definitely horrendous, and I think you have to look at, all right, that's coaching because something didn't go right as far as what you were scheming up. But again, you backtrack to, the even ice play. It was definitely just not. We're never the first one to see the puck. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So in the long run, now this is like a hard-hitting question for you. Who do you think will have the bigger impact on this franchise 10 to 15 years from now? Is it going to be number 86, Jack Hughes, or is it going to be number 43, his brother Luke Hughes? Whose impact is more important?
Well, Luke Hughes has obviously had a smaller sample size, but he's definitely had less issues staying on the ice than his brother does. And I mean, injuries obviously are a part of the game. Guys are going to get hurt. It just feels like every time he gets it going, he's out with a major injury. Now, I mean, I'm not going to tell the guy how to live his life, but you definitely need to have him put on some size. You need to have him work a little bit on kind of protecting himself, like kind of how in the NFL quarterbacks learn to protect themselves. He's got to learn how to protect himself because he's going to get hit. And Luke is similar stature, maybe a little bit bigger, but Luke just seems to know how to get back on the ice quickly. I mean, Jack just seems to have these injuries that are season ending, which is very unfortunate, but it's just how the sport goes and how the game goes. You got to have that ability to rebound. And obviously you see it in every sport. There's guys go out for the year. I mean, we saw it in the NBA, all playoffs, but to me, it's like, can you get back on the ice and stay healthy? And he just hasn't been able to do that. So right now it's definitely Luke for sure, because Luke has had his injuries, but he's gotten back on the ice.
Yeah, and I feel like with Jack, he hasn't really played a full season. We're going to minus COVID, but he hasn't had a full season in his books, realistically, besides 22-23.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, when he's on the ice, they're playing well, and he's an impact player, but, you need him to stay on the ice. And a lot of his injuries are those injuries that are from hits that are happening. So it's like I said, how a quarterback learns how to go down. It's almost like he needs to learn a way to, all right, this guy's going to come hit me. I got to get rid of the puck sooner. I got to learn to give myself up. Like there's just got to be a way in his game plan that it's to protect himself long term. And it just feels like he hasn't done that these past couple of years that he's gotten hurt.
So wouldn't that fall on the training staff?
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, in the pros, a lot of these guys have their own trainers, that are working with them in the off season. I mean, you don't see these guys in the Devil's locker or excuse me, the Devil's strength training room in the middle of July. It's just not going to happen, So it's like he needs to know what his regimen is to where, okay, this is what's going to be best for me to stay healthy. And then he has to take that initiative with whoever his trainer is. I mean, I guess he can work with the Devil's strength staff, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things as an adult, you need to know, it's no different than when you and I go to work, and if something's bothering you, you have to take care of it. So it's like, just like a
Yeah.
human being, something's bothering him, he's got to take care of it.
Yeah, we could talk to James about injuries that we have, and Jack Hughes could talk to his trainer about
Yeah.
injuries he may have or how to prevent them, how to
Yeah.
stretch, how to stay on your balance.
Or just, like I said, just learning how to go down. I mean, you look at going off a different sport. Tua went through that jiu-jitsu of, hey, I got to learn how to be put in different positions, because just like in hockey, you're going to get hit, and you're going to be maybe end up on your shoulder or end up on your back or end up on your knee or etc. And he needs to learn how his body can acclimate to that. So yeah, I mean, it's partially on the team for sure, but if he's not showing that initiative of working on in the offseason, these guys are under contract. It's like their offseason is still their offseason. As you see, these guys have a life too, and they're going to go about their life, so they can't always have the team micromanaging their life. They're going to have some responsibility on their own.
So let's talk about Jake Allen, who just happened to sign a 5-year deal worth like 1.5 mil a year. That's a steal for a backup goalie. So let's talk about him for a bit. How important do you think he is as a backup for Jacob Markstrom and this New Jersey Devils organization?
I think he's going to be a great stepping stone to this team. I mean, I think in the long term, I might be a little biased, but Mikhail Yegorov, I might be saying that wrong, but he to me is the real deal.
Yeah,
In their
the
development.
guy from Boston U, I believe.
Yes, yeah, he's the real deal. So having two guys that are very experienced and that are going to hopefully help him. I mean, I hope at some point he can maybe get, I don't know if it'll be, this year or next year, but maybe can get some activation on that, that full squad, so he can learn a little bit from them, because he, from what I've seen, has a ton of talent, and I'm really looking forward to him. So I think Jake Allen could play a huge role in helping him develop as a goaltender.
So would that leave Nico Dars as the odd man out?
It could be. I mean, he could be the development for Dawes. I think you can attest. We've had a goalie issue for the past 5 years, if not longer. So
John Gillis,
Yeah.
Andrew Hammond. The list could go on and on.
ever since Corey Schneider, it's been, it's like that Browns jersey where they put the tape over the guy's name. That's been our goaltending issue since Brodeur and Schneider.
Yeah.
So I think it could be he could be the odd man out, or it could be, oh wait, he's gonna be the pass the torch kind of guy. I couldn't put a finger on what this organization is doing as far as goaltending, because they have Markstrom, who, like I said, is an older goalie. You have Jake Allen, who's an older backup goalie, and you're like kind of hoping that they're gonna take you where you need to go. And it just feels like they don't have that next. Like, I'm hoping it's Yegorov. I really do. But again, that could be my bias. But it just doesn't seem like Dawes is going to be the one with his sample size of play that is going to really be the 5-year plan, in my opinion.
So I think the Devils lack depth. Would you say they're lacking depth? They're lacking size, physicality?
100%. 100%.
So the New Jersey Devils have signed Connor Brown to a 4-year deal worth about $3.5 million over the course of his contract. Would this be an upgrade for some of our third and fourth liners?
I think it's more of a competition than anything. I think it kind of opens guys. I think it also, getting rid of, Tatar going overseas and Haula getting traded. I think that kind of opened up their eyes too. But I think it's more of a friendly competition of, hey, if you don't work hard, I'm going to be on the second line kind of thing. But I don't necessarily know if it's going to make them better. I think it's going to help them work harder, though, which could make them better. I just don't, I don't have enough knowledge of Connor Brown, but I know he definitely, if I'm correct, he was on the Oilers last year, right?
Yeah, and he played some first line minutes with Connor McDavid too.
Yeah.
So he's
So
he's he's been a first liner guy too.
So I think it's one of those things that, he was on a winning team. You're bringing a winning culture, which I think we all thought Palat was going to do, which he never did. So, I mean, I'm not going to – I don't really know exactly if he's going to make them better. I think he's going to make them work harder, though. That's for sure. I think he knows what it takes to get to that next step. It's just a matter of, does the rest of the team want to buy in with it?
Yeah, because I wasn't thinking it from that perspective, but you do make a good point. Because a lot of our second line guys, they're inconsistent. So if you have that competition, that will make them a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, if a guy's playing well in December and Timo's not playing well, guess what? He might end up on that third line. I mean, they always say, the coach's job is to put the best product on the field and or the ice in this standpoint. And guess what? If Connor Brown's playing the best hockey in December, somebody's got to move, and that's I think it's good to at least start to look at that depth because it's something that they've struggled with the past couple years. It feels like when they got the depth, like when they got Zetterlund, he left. Haula worked for a little bit, and then he kind of tapered off at the end of his career. So, I mean, just looking at last year's team, I mean, like Neeson and Cotter and, Cody Glass, those are all guys that hopefully, he can push to work better if they want to make that top six, forwards.
So this is a fun question for you. I want to see what you think about it. Are New Jersey Devil fans bad for the game of hockey? I wouldn't say worse, but are they bad for the game of hockey?
I think a lot of people think that. I unfortunately don't know if I can agree with it, only because I've been to several different arenas. I've been to Arizona when they were still in the league. I went to Nashville this past season, and it's you could hear a pin drop in those arenas. So it's like you kind of come back to the Prudential Center and you see the energy that these fans bring, and it's like, are we going to call that bad, or are we going to call it just maybe not the most educated fans? I don't think they're bad for the game of hockey or for the NHL. I think they just want to win. I mean, you remember 2 years ago when they went on that 13-game or 12-game win streak, that place was rocking. I mean,
it was on fire.
So, how are you going to say that they're, bad for hockey when they just want to win? I mean, you look at, Devils Rangers games, Devils Flyers games, those fans, yeah, it's probably about 60-40, between Devils fans and Flyers fans, but they're still bringing the juice for their team to win. And I mean, I just don't. I think in the market we're in, you're so used to that, Islanders, Rangers, fan base that's going to sell out because they have the corporate seats, and I don't think the Devils have that. So you're going to have that rare occurrence where, the uneducated fan is going to, go to the game and have a good time, and maybe not know exactly the most about the team. So I don't think they're bad for hockey, but I definitely have heard that take. I know I've seen it on Facebook. There's a group like, I love the Devils, but I hate the fans or something. Like I've even come across that.
Yes, I've seen people post that saying they're Devil fans, but they can't stand our fan base. So I wanted to get your point of view of it and see where you line up with it.
Yeah, I think they're a hungry fan base that hasn't won in 20 plus years, and they, you have that big brother, and I know you joke around and call it the little brother, but you have that big brother of the New York market that's always, you're never going to be able to compete with that. It's the Devils are still only been around for 40 plus years. They haven't been around 100 years like the Rangers. They haven't been around 60, 70 years like the Islanders. You're never going to be able to compete with that loyalty yet. I mean, it's going to take a lot more winning for people to want to jump ship in a New York market. I mean, it's just too tough to compete with the market, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too, from like the corporate standpoint, because at the Garden, even at UBS, you have the big corporate spenders. So from that point of view, I get it. But for me, I just feel like where were they from 13-14 to 22-23? That's
Yeah,
just
I
how
mean,
I look at it.
you would know better than I would. I'd love to hear your opinion because you've been this is your 13th year season ticket.
I think 15th. I'm getting another jersey,
Yeah,
so
so
yeah,
15th
15.
year. You're talking to someone who's only on his 4th year, so I definitely you'd have a better inkling than I would. But I mean, I just, I think in the market. I mean, you could also point fingers at where they put the arena too. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I always argued and said it should be a little further south because then you differentiate yourself from that New York market. I mean, you could look, you see it from the upper level at the Prudential Center. You see across the river in New York City. So how do
yeah,
you
you can
differentiate
going
yourself?
down that escalator.
Yeah, how do you differentiate yourself from that market when you're 7 miles south of that market? And I just feel like if they were, being Jersey's team, you could had the opportunity to pick maybe a little bit more of a central location, and they botched that one for sure.
Yeah, I just feel like you look at other fan base winning or losing, the fans always show up.
Mhm.
I just feel like we've had the inconsistencies during our rebuild years.
And now let's spins on that. What are some fan bases you're talking about that you see winning?
I guess the Rangers, Avalanche. There's a few fans that have stayed consistent. I think we lost Dan.
I just cut out. My
No,
power, just went out.
Dan's
My
right
power
there.
just went out. So
Must
yeah,
be.
yeah. So we're going in the dark now. We're going in the
Oh,
dark.
that
now.
is
What
great,
were we saying?
Daniel. I say Colorado, New York,
Okay.
but those are Philly's
Okay.
always been,
Yeah.
been there.
Okay.
Oh, maybe it's
But
just me.
you look at. I think you're also looking at what else is. I mean, is New York really there, or are the corporate just doing tax write-offs? I mean, you look at like Nashville, for instance. Yeah, they've been in the Stanley Cup final, and this year you could hear a pin drop in that arena, because they were terrible. You look at Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they couldn't sell tickets, so I think it's just a recency bias of like. You maybe are used to that New York market where, yeah, of course they're going to sell tickets because they're just going to give them away to their clients.
That's a good take.
Or Edmonton. What else is there to do in Edmonton, Alberta? I mean, come on.
Nothing really.
Exactly. So I think you got to look at the market and exactly, what's within that market.
Again, if you're just joining us, Dan lost his power. That's why he's in the dark right now, but we appreciate him coming on. So, off-season started. They made a few trades. They signed Brown. They re-signed Allen. Do they finally move on from Dougie Hamilton and Andre Palat?
I think Palat, yes. I think Dougie, he's got one more year. I mean, I'm still, I'm still looking at, he had a +8 on the ice this year. He had 9 goals, 31 assists, so he had a 40-point year in 64 games. I mean, he still put up relatively decent numbers. So I don't think he's an issue. But when you look down that list, you had Palat, who played 77 games and had 28 points. Who last time I checked is a left winger. So I don't think a point every 3 games is acceptable from a guy who's going to play 77 games.
All right, so let's play a game. You like playing games, Daniel?
I do, especially in the dark. It's my favorite part.
Oh, it's getting darker and darker. This is
Yes.
great. So let's do a game where, you have to pick a free agent, a realistic one and one you want to sign.
Okay.
So like the one that Tom Fitzgerald will probably go after and one that Daniel Placko wants to go after.
Gotcha.
Who you got?
So I definitely a dream case scenario would be Kachuk. I believe he's up this year. I can't remember, but I think Matthew Tkachuk would be a huge splash of a dream scenario. That is the grit that I was talking about earlier. As far as who I realistically think they could get, I mean, I'd like to say someone along the lines of, like Ryan Lindgren, but I don't see them being able to find the cap space for that. So as far as a realistic one, I'd love to hear your perspective. Dream case would definitely be Kachuk, though.
And Brady.
Yes. I'm sorry. Did I say Matthew? My bad.
Yeah.
Brady Kachuk. Sorry, it's that darkness brain.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at your screen. I'm like, yeah, he disappeared. So
Get some light in here.
For me,
let's get a little more light.
I would like to go after like a Jack Roslovic or a Jeff Skinner. But I think the Devils would go after someone like someone that don't cost much. Like they may go after like a Justin Dowling type again. Just because that's the way Fitzy has been branding his team. He may go after someone that's like a two-way contract. I would like to see a Roslovic or a Jeff Skinner. I just don't think he's going to go that route. I think he trusts his system, and he tries to have guys that he can call up or send down that could play both AHL and NHL. I don't see him spending big on a bottom six player.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that too. I mean, I know there's, you're looking at like defensemen. You got unrestricted is like Dmitry Orlov. I mean, he's 33 years old, but you're looking at he's probably going to want too much money. I think it comes down to they have to fall within that budget too. I just don't. I don't know exactly. I always joke around and say I don't know too much about the cap, so I don't know exactly how much they can spend. But I definitely, they're tough. Getting rid of Halleck's contract definitely helped.
Yeah, I think they're at $9 million now after the Connor Brown.
Okay, so you could really get maybe two more guys out of that.
Yeah, so that's why I think they'll go after like a Justin Dowling type player.
Yeah, I mean, you also look at too is like, yeah, you want to make that big splash, but you have all these guys like LeChance, Cole Brown, Ben Keevan, in the minors in this, development camp, Cam Squires. I still can't say it right.
Squires.
Yeah, Squires. I know he came up for a few games. Like, how much can these guys develop to where you can, have them and you don't need to sign a guy per se? So.
All right, before we let you go, so you get your situation situated with this power. At least I haven't lost mine yet. That would be funny.
Hoping you're okay.
Yeah, because if it goes, the show goes too.
Uh-oh.
So, Quinn Hughes, will he play with Luke and Jack within his career?
I think yes. My fear, I don't know if it's on the Devils. I don't know. If it would be 2 years from now, I believe his contract would be up, if I'm correct.
Something like that.
Yeah, so 2 years from now, can the Devils put themselves in a spot that they're winning enough to where Jack wants to stay and Luke wants to stay? Because the minute they lose one of those guys, it's not going to happen in Jersey. I definitely think they'll play together. I hope it's in New Jersey, but we got to put together a winning team, at least in my opinion, out of the first round for them to want to stay. I know Jack's under contract for several more years, but you know how it is with athletes. If they could very easily ask for a trade. I mean, you're watching it with Connor McDavid right now. The guy's indirectly asking for a trade, and he's the best player in hockey. So, you got to keep these guys happy. You got to keep these guys winning, and hopefully they will want to play together in Jersey. But the short answer is yes. I think they're going to play together within the next 3 to 5 years.
You just don't know where.
Yep. Nope. That'll maybe be for next year's podcast.
Yeah, that could be it. So I was going to ask you a question, and I totally forgot what it was. Let's see if I can remember. It regards to this team and where they have to go. Oh, so it's not win or bust. They have the pieces in place. But how important is it for them to get to like a conference final? Yes, they could get embarrassed by Florida because I think every team will in the next 5 or so years. How important is it for them to get to that conference final? Just where you could say, you know, we could compete. We could go on a run. And then they could maybe bring in a guy or two to get over the hump.
I think it's a must within the next 3 years. I think going back to what we were talking about the market, I definitely think that you're in a market where they can get away with not being the best team. And I think, going back to ownership, I think they talk about ownership a lot. It's, are we the ugly redhead stepchild of, Josh Harris's empire? So it's like, trickling down, if ownership's not caring that much, the fan base a lot of times is going to lose interest. So I think it's a must as far as the next 3 years, just to say we're trying to win. I mean, look at the Commanders. How much we're making a NFC conference final. How much that rejuvenated that franchise, and they got embarrassed. So I mean, I think if you can just get there and just say we're right there as far as an organization. Look at us trying to win. This fan base could turn around. As far as going back to what you're saying about being bad for hockey, I think it could become one of the most up and coming fun times to be a Devils fan if they can get to that conference final.
Again, if you're just joining us, we're about to wrap up. We got Daniel Placko with us. So, fun for thought or food for thought, whatever that expression is. Where do you see them going next year? Could it be a conference final? Could it be the second round? Could it be on the golf course? Where do you see this Devils team finishing up?
I think they're going back to the playoffs. I mean, you look at Pittsburgh's still really bad. Rangers are a dumpster fire. The Islanders are still a couple years away. So that Metropolitan, I think, unless Washington puts up a crazy year like they did this past year, I think you're looking at Carolina 1 and the Devils 2 next year in the Metropolitan. I think that thankfully might get them out of playing Carolina in the first round, which we know we cannot beat. So I think if they can avoid Carolina in that first round and let the playoffs take its course with whoever plays them, I think there's a very good chance they're going out of the first round and taking it round by round. But I think the ceiling is definitely probably the conference finals. I think the floor is first round exit like last time.
Oh boy. First round exit. For me, I think they get to at least the second round. I think they have the pieces in place. They just need to stay healthy. They need to stay consistent. And they have to find a way to hold leads. Especially when you get to the playoffs. You want to score first. We put the shots on Carolina, on Anderson in Game 4. We had the momentum. And then we went down 2-0 quick. So for me, if the Devils could stay consistent and not blow all these leads when it gets to the third period, I think the Devils could be a good team next year come April and May. It's going to be tough with Florida. Toronto's always iffy. Tampa, But for me, I just see, I don't know. Florida's still the team to beat, but I just think the Devils are going to need a lot more depth to get past Florida. I think they can get past teams like Washington, the Islanders, Tampa, Carolina, always a tough cookie to play against them. But I think the Devils do have the pieces in place to at least get to the second round of the playoffs. Again, thank you for joining us on the Doug Siravo Show, which is brought to you by our good friends at Unsolicited Role Models, the role models you may not want, but you may just need Tonight we had Daniel Placko. As always, thank you for joining us. We'll see everybody next time on The Doug Siravo Show.